Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is your man, Big B, Brien Hanley, along with Tim Fitzgerald. Welcome back to Big 12 Insiders. We appreciate everybody being in here. You know, a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, this is the off season, Big 12, still in the news. But you know what? One of the topics that's come to mind, and somebody brought this up and wanted us to have a show about it, is the Big 12 really in the midst of collapsing? Is there a possibility that the Big 12 goes under? And is it really even the third conference when we talk about the hierarchy of conferences? Are they on the same pedestal or ahead of the ACC? We're going to take a look at that today and discuss that in detail. So I appreciate everybody being in here. Again, remember to like, follow, subscribe. Wanting to get to 4,000. I think we should get to 4,000 before the season starts. So maybe we'll have to readjust that goal. But that's the goal for now. So appreciate everybody. Continue to get in the comments and hit that notification bell so you know exactly when Big 12 Insiders content comes out. So let's discuss this. Is the Big 12 Fitz? Is it on the verge of a collapse? Now, I know some people might think, oh, well, that's a clickbaitish topic, but it really isn't, because when you take a deep dive and you look at the Big 12, it's like, okay, are they really third in the pecking order? I know we've said that they're third in the pecking order, but when you do the deep dive, it's like, I don't know. You look at the ACC, the brands are just bigger. I mean, there's no doubt that the brands are bigger. And look, I know you can talk about basketball all we want, but football drives this thing. Clemson, Florida State, Miami, no doubt. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, Fitz. Those brands are bigger. And if they're winning, which they're not necessarily, I know Clemson made it into the college football playoff last year, but if those brands are winning, there's nothing, and I mean nothing, that any brand in the Big 12 can do to touch those guys, Fitz.
As of now, I think BYU can get there because they're so national, international.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. The top brands in the ACC are bigger than the brands in the Big 12. On the other end of that equation is, I believe the lesser brands in the Big 12, if that makes sense, are far superior to the football brands in the ACC and some of those schools. Duke, for example, great basketball brand, but it doesn't really spill over to football. Nobody takes Duke that seriously, except with the exception of a few years when they've been good. Wake Forest, trash. Syracuse has devolved into blah. Boston College, blah. Quite often. There's just a lot of brands there that don't bring much to the table. And honestly, if it's the ACC that breaks up next, there's going to be more schools that's left out from the ACC than there would be from the Big 12. If it came down to going to 60 or 70, whatever, I think you'd see some ACC brands just gone from major athletics. But it is a valid point. But it's also kind of a security blanket in a weird way, Big B, because those three brands mean the ACC is going to get the next raid. The ACC's in the crosshairs next because those brands bring more value and visibility as of now to those conferences. Would you take Florida State or Oklahoma State? You take Florida State, Would you take Clemson or Kansas State? Academically, two very comparable schools. You take Clemson. You just go down the list. Miami or Colorado. Colorado's moving up because as long as Deion's there, they're going to have some oomph. You still take Miami because it's a bigger national brand. It's got some really cool history to it. So yeah, there's a reason for concern there.
Right. And that's the thing. It's that, you mentioned the lower brands, but that's kind of been the argument for years about the the SEC and the Big Ten. Is like, look, you're top heavy and the bottom of your conference is garbage, and we all know it. And, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. You say the same thing about the ACC. Now, you don't really say that about the Big 12. And I think the reason is because of the parity that we've talked about, is that you don't know from week to week or year to year who's going to be good and who's not. It just changes all the time. And I think that's an advantage. And you mentioned that. I like that as an advantage. But when everything is said and done, if there's really going to be what we call these super conferences, there's only going to be 2. There's not going to be 3. They're not going to have 3 super conferences, because as much as we are mad about it, the SEC / Big Ten / ESPN is in control of all of this. And since they are in control and they have asserted their power, not a whole lot that we're going to do about it. They're going to say there's going to be 2 conferences and we're going to have the pick of the litter. And so if that's the case, then the Big 12 is going to go bye-bye. The ACC obviously too. But until that happens, I'm just looking at it, and you look at the hierarchy, I think the Big 12 has its work cut out for them.
Right.
It has its work cut out because of what you mentioned, the bigger brands. Now, Colorado seeping into that, the thing about it is there's going to become some Deion fatigue with that, Fitz, because you are right about Colorado. As long as he's there, they're going to have some cachet. They're going to have popularity. But sooner or later, that Deion fatigue is going to wear thin, because everybody's going to – they're already saying it. You got to win something, and but isn't it funny? They won 9 games last year. Winning 9 games used to mean something. Now winning 9 games means absolutely nothing. Is that, you won 9 games. Well, you didn't win a bowl. You didn't make the college football playoff. It means nothing. And I'm like, wow. 9 games. 2 years ago, they won 1 game, and now they won 9 games, and it means nothing. It's weird to me how that works. But that's the thing, is like, they got to start winning. You're right about BYU. I think BYU has an opportunity to get there. We did a show a couple of weeks back talking about, is BYU next? We did the same thing with Texas Tech. Texas Tech's got its work cut out for it this year. I said it before. They have to win. In football, they have to win. You can't keep having the best roster or whatever the case may be. It's not good enough to be close anymore. And I think that holds true for the entire Big 12. It's not good enough to just say, okay, we got to the table. Well, you got to the table, but you didn't get any food. Well, okay, great. You're at the table, but who cares? If you didn't eat, doesn't matter. And the Big 12's got to start doing that. I think the onus is on us to start taking the food away from other people, if that makes sense.
Agreed. That's one of the things I like about Kansas State and Iowa State opening the 25 season in Dublin.
They get a chance.
The only game. It's a national stage. It's a great what's the word I want to look for? A great opportunity for both of those brands to, push their persona out there, but it's huge for the Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
That game needs to be entertaining. It needs to be fun. It needs to be a Big 12 game, because it's fun football to watch. It's fun football to bet on. And being the only game in the world, I was going to say in town, but it's hard to call Dublin your town, is just enormous for this conference.
Yeah.
Be able to be center stage, because you're not given that opportunity very often. And now you have it, and you'll be on ESPN, which is a reluctant partner now to the Big 12, which stinks. They're horrible at business, man. They're so egocentric, and they've got a godlike syndrome amongst them as a network that they're ruinous in many ways. But Big B, the big question here in all of this process is, what's the number the Big Ten and SEC want in terms of members?
Mm-hmm.
Or their TV partners, because we don't look at it this way very often, but it's about inventory for these networks. Are you going to deliver improved inventory by adding more schools? Or do you take schools like Kansas State and Iowa State, and even though that game's now Big Ten, let's just throw that out there, it's a Big Ten game instead of a Big 12 game, I think it loses a lot of its meaning at that point, because it just becomes another Big Ten game. And while these teams are, in the mix in the Big 12, because there's not those super alphas like Ohio State and Georgia, we don't have that kind of budgetary dominance and tradition dominance in this conference, which is a downside in everything we're discussing here, but an upside in terms of competition.
Right.
But are they going to be happy at 20, which is an unreasonable number? I think 16 is the best number for a conference that wants to be big, but we're going to push towards 20 because, hell, the Big Ten's already gone to 18. Okay, 20, the Big 12 survives. And I just did one of my daily delivery videos on what if the Big 12 and ACC both survive, but they lose 6 total programs amongst the two of them, including 2 from the Big 12. What's that do to the Big 12? Are they going to stay at 14, or will they invite a Boise and a South Florida? Would they do that if they can't get anyone from the ACC? But if the Big 10 and SEC go to 24, they're both dead. If they go to 30, which I don't see the purpose of, but if they go to 30, college football is decimated as we know it, because more than, roughly half the programs, I guess, would just be left out of the game. Mm-hmm. Granted, some of them are Jacksonville State. Some of them are South Alabama or even Boise State. But it's still going to damage college football to a huge degree. And at that point, what Big 12 schools make it in at 20, at 24, at 30? Not all of them. Not all of them. And what do you bring to the table? It's almost vital for schools in the next 4-5 years to have constant success. Because if you slide into the background when the music stops, you're not going to have a chair to sit in.
Right.
And that's just the reality. So what number do they want? What number do the TV networks want? What is their inventory number? I tend to think it's 20, maybe 24, which becomes troublesome.
Yeah. If it goes to 24, that'll be a problem.
Yeah.
30. Yeah. 30. Yeah. It's 100%. Even at 24, I think it would be over. It's sustainable, but then it's kind of what you said. You're in survival mode, kind of like the ACC was last year. ACC needed a certain number of teams, thinking that they were going to lose Florida State and Clemson. So then they invite a Cal and a Stanford and an SMU, which, the Cal and SMU, whatever. I thought the Big 12 could have done that, but fine. But the Cal and Stanford in the Atlantic Coast Conference, it makes perfect sense. But it seemed to be a reach. But to have 2 teams literally on the Pacific Coast to be a part of the Atlantic Coast Conference, I'm just like, Lord, what are we doing here? But again, it was survival mode, and that's what it was. I don't know. Like I said, I would like to think that the Big 12 has solid ground. And the reason that I say that is because you mentioned it. It is exciting football. It is exciting. They do play top-notch basketball, whether ESPN wants to admit that or not, and that's part of it. It's just like you meant the reluctant partner thing is not a myth. Look at all the really good college basketball games this past year in the Big 12 that were on ESPN Plus. That's all you have to know on whether you think that they are a real partner or not. ESPN Plus is what some of these games got relegated to just because they would put another team on, another conference on. It is what it is. And so that's a problem for me. And I think it's a problem for a lot of people. We can talk about other networks getting us. Look, it comes down to this. If you want to have a seat at the table, somebody else is in charge of that table and in charge of that food on that table, unfortunately. The only way that you can get a part and be a part of that, of eating, is you have to win. And that's what it comes down to, Fitz. It's no longer good enough to just say, hey, we fought. It's no longer good enough to say, hey, look at our parity. And while I think the parity is great, sooner or later, the parity somebody has to be really, really good. It can't just be, okay, Utah was good this year, but they stunk the year before. Okay. And then they're going to be bad the year after that. That can't be the case. It's got to be, who can we look at to say, okay, take control of this thing and make this conference be the conference that it is? Because I just have a feeling, look, I love the parity within the conference. I think that's what makes it so exciting. But does it make that exciting to advertisers that want to have you on their network? Does it make it exciting to somebody there? that says we don't know who's going to be good from year to year. What are we doing? Why do we want this to be a part of that? Especially if they don't win in the college football playoff. Now, if they win in the college football playoff, Fitz, and every year it's somebody different out of the Big 12, and they get to the Final Four, they get to the national championship game, they're doing damage. That's a different conversation, because now you can start to say, hey, look at the conference. We don't know who's coming out, but we do know when somebody does come out that they're a player in this thing. And that's what they have to start being. They just got to win. I know I keep harping on that, but it's just the truth. You got to win. We got to take the food off the table, because they're not going to hand it to us, Fitz.
I agree 100%. And another question here is, if you're a Kansas State, I'm trying to think of someone else here, Baylor, UCF, I don't know. I'm trying to think of schools that have enough resources to compete now, but when this escalation continues, will they have enough then?
Right.
Do you want to be in that upper division at that point where you become the tackling dummy, where you simply can't ever reach? It's no longer about just getting players and competing. You don't have the resources to accomplish it. Do you want to be part of that? Or do you want to slide into like a new middle group between the FCS and FBS, whatever the names they come up with, and be the boss? Money will be less, but it'll be fun to win. It's an interesting question that I think every school kind of stuck at that cutoff line, around the cutoff line, whether it's 48 or 60 or whatever. If you're around there, it's something you have to consider. Do we really want to do this? Do we want to become Purdue? And just know that we've got a rich tradition. We've got a basketball tradition. We've been around a long time, but now we're pretty much here to get our ass kicked in conference play of football.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a fun existence for a fan base.
It isn't.
Nebraska fans can preach how much they love the Big Ten all they want. We know you're lying. This sucks.
Yep.
Your brand was devalued by doing this. You lost all your cachet that came with the history of the Big 8 and Big 12 and the recruiting that went with it, and you just became an outlier in the Big 10, and it's taken a toll. So do you want to go through that? I think we're going to see Oklahoma go through that unless they really find the resources to change the dynamic, which is a lot of resources, more resources than most Big 12 schools in the current environment can command, and they still may not be able to do it. It's a weird situation, Big B. And, trying to decide if you want to be bad to average in the top level is what you want, because then you're competing with the best, or do you want to be good and possibly dominant at a step down? Do you want to be North Dakota State of this new level? North Dakota State has no, as far as I can tell, desire to move up, because they're the boss. Them in South Dakota State, they're the bosses of their domain.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty cool existence for a fan base.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You mentioned it. The money will be less. You'll still be on TV. You'll still be able to do all these things. It just won't be at the top tier. Are you okay not being in the top tier? I would say, if you look at it right now, I think a lot of those schools understand right now. Here's the things, like the SEC schools get a ton of money, but there's several of them that aren't in that top tier, and they know it. They know it. And it seems to me like they're okay with it. Like Vanderbilt, they're okay with it, going along for the ride. They're okay. Mississippi State, they're okay with it. They're going along for the ride. Another team that you had mentioned, they've had success in the past, but they're becoming the punching bag, is Auburn. Now, you wouldn't think Auburn is a punching bag. Auburn is a punching bag, people. Now, they're never going to admit it, but they are absolutely a punching bag in the SEC. They're not coming close to winning anything anytime soon. How many coaches have they had in the last 10 years? And that's Auburn. Think about that for a second. They are an absolute punching bag in the SEC,
Arkansas.
and I don't care what anybody says.
Arkansas is the same way.
Yes, Arkansas. I was going to say, and if Arkansas really wanted to tap in, Arkansas could have more money than any program in the United States of America. Think about that for a second. I know you're, what are you talking about, Big B? Well, number one, you know, they got the guy, the CEO of Tyson, you know, either he's the CEO or the owner, whatever the case, of Tyson Chicken. That's how John Calipari got there. They also just happen to have Walmart money. So if they wanted to tap into that, and those people that have that money decided, you know what, I'm done being mediocre, we're going to just tap in and we're going to own this, they would have more money than everybody. That doesn't mean that they're going to win, though. You know, and that's the difference, is that you got to get the right people in place. So we've seen Texas for years. They had more money than anybody in the Big 12. How long did it take for them to win another Big 12 title? I mean, they went a decade without winning it. And weren't even relevant in the Big 12. Weren't even relevant. And they had more money than anybody. Yep. Now, they're going to tell you that they were relevant. They're lying. And everybody in the Big 12 that was in it, they know they're lying. You know, the last year, I get it. They won it. But before that, yeah, they weren't relevant. And we all know that. But that's okay. It's the punching bag level of what you're talking about currently exists. And my whole thing is, would they be willing to kick teams out of that upper tier to get other teams in? Like if you were willing to grab a Utah or a BYU or whoever from these, or a Baylor or a Clemson, are you willing to grab them? Are you willing to kick out people? I think they are. I think that these conferences, if you go to a super conference, it's going to be a total restructure.
Absolutely.
And somebody is getting kicked out. There's going to be several teams that just get kicked out of this thing. There'll be lawsuits out the wazoo, and it'll end up being a mess. But that if they go to this, that's what's going to happen, Fitz. And that's where I'm like, how many Big 12 teams are actually going to be involved in that? That's, to me, is a big question. Because you look at like a Kansas. Well, Kansas has great great basketball. But and we talk about Kansas being a huge basketball brand, and it is. But how many Kansas basketball fans are in California? Like, how many Kansas basketball fans are in Washington, D.C.? You know, so it's still regional when we're talking about Kansas basketball, as big as they are, and it is big, but it's still regional. It's still regional, and that's where the difference comes in. I'm like, I don't know, man. It's crazy.
You know, we always point to Nebraska as a cautionary tale, but I think Arkansas is maybe the bigger cautionary tale. When I'm growing up, I think you could almost consider Arkansas, when they were in the Southwest Conference, to be a blue blood. I mean, they were on par with Texas.
Oh, yeah.
And then they left to go to the SEC, and they had a lot of success. But now it's kind of dwindled. Nobody really talks about Arkansas as a blue blood anymore. Are they? Were they? They were close. I mean, growing up, Arkansas was on the tube a lot.
A lot.
It was a well-known brand, and I think it might actually fall under what I classify as a blue blood, a program that built itself up in that gap between World War II and the early onset of color TV.
Mm-hmm.
That stretch of 30, 35, 40 years. That's when the Blue Bloods were born and created. And they were part of that. And then they went to the SEC. Man, I don't think it's been good for them. It's been good for them financially, wonderfully for them. But do we want to live in a big house where our neighbors have better houses and we owe a lot of money? I mean, you know, at what point do you realize we need to downsize?
Right.
Nobody seems to want to have that conversation. And I think a lot of schools will have to have that conversation in this coming environment. But to get back to the bigger question, is the Big 12 going to die? Big B, I think the Big 12 will always survive in some form. It might die as a power conference. Because if ESPN gets its way and puts the pillow over the faces of other conferences and literally smothers them, which is what they're trying to do from a business standpoint right now, it's going to devastate a lot of programs. And it creates the question, why does the Big 12 still want to be partners with ESPN? I mean, why does ESPN want the Big 12 around except for, that inventory that they can fill up ESPN Plus with, which is apparently what they think of the Big 12. They've spent a lot of money to do that. It doesn't make financial sense to me.
Right.
If I'm Brett Yormark, I might approach and say, do you really want to keep doing this, or do you want to open this up early? I mean, you're putting all these games on ESPN Plus where you're not making very much money off it. How are you recovering your investment here? That's ESPN's got to stop and think about it. What are they doing? I don't know, man. I think the Big 12 will survive. It's just at what level? I mean, will they be amputated to the point of they just don't look right or function right anymore? Probably, but it'll be around. They'll be around.
Yeah, that'll absolutely stink. So hopefully cooler heads prevail. But I've said this once, and I'll continue to say it. When money and greed is involved, there are no cooler heads. Cooler heads never prevail when money and greed is involved. So I know that's a bleak outlook, but you know how we do it here. We're just reality, man. It's just reality. So either way.
Big B, I just want to plug this. I left this up. I just literally recorded the first episode of my other podcast, Life of Fitz. It was born in the pandemic. If you don't, we don't discuss it on this channel, but I have advanced cancer, and I couldn't really leave the house. So I just started calling friends and having conversations about life and, the obstacles, these things we overcome. You've been on it, and I'm going to cross 100 episodes this summer with season 6, but we just recorded the first one that'll premiere later this month or early in June, but that's why I'm very blue today. Very, very blue. It's a prostate cancer color.
I mean, it is a great series that you started, Fitz.
It's fun.
And I encourage you to keep doing it, man. I know I have no idea what your fight is like or has been like, but the one thing that I know is that you are a great human being. Thank you. People love you, and they want to hear you. They want to talk to you, and they want to keep you in their – They like seeing you out there. I know you always make jokes about it. People like seeing you, man. You have a lovable face, man. So this is good stuff. It's good stuff. I appreciate it.
It's fun. What's cool about it is their conversations. The podcast started just as audio. Last few years, it's moved into the video realm. But they're just two friends having a conversation, two people having a conversation, because now I'm bringing on people that I've not really met before. We're just talking about life, just a simple conversation, and you get to listen between two people mixing it up. And our first episode of this season, he's been on before, but it's Chris Kleiman, because he's faced some personal challenges and professional challenges with what's going on in college football. We got into all that, and but I'll be branching out. I think I might try to reach out to the former BYU AD and see if Tom wants to come on and spread my wings a little bit with some other people.
Absolutely. Appreciate you sharing all that with us. Make sure everybody go check that out. Life of Fitz. Absolutely. Where can they find that at, Fitz?
Well, it's part of the Go PowerCat YouTube channel, but it exists as its own podcast. It's not part of the PowerCat podcast feed. It's the Life of Fitz podcast. And if you want to go back and listen to old episodes, some of them are time capsules, what we were talking about, but there's still some really relevant conversations. Last year was much more personal and local, but those are all on your podcast network, whatever your preferred one is. For some reason, I'm an Amazon guy. But they're also, last season is also up on the Go PowerCat YouTube channel. If you want to check that out, it's fun, it's uplifting, and sometimes serious and sometimes not serious. I need to have Nick Leckie, our friend, on again, because that was the most unhinged Life of Fitz we've ever had, because we both we love to go off the rails, and we did it.
Absolutely. So I appreciate it. Thank you for that. And thanks everybody else again for tuning in, man. Spirited conversation today. We'll be back tomorrow. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe. Appreciate you in those comments section. Thank you guys, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for watching the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. This has been a Spirit Street production.